Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase. With me, as always, my man Cody. And today we are bringing you yet another 2024 Dynasty Superflex Rookie Mock. So we have the entire Destination Devy and DTi5 crew. Have some content creators in here as well. So we're going to have some Ray, Scott, Shane, a great group of people in here. Going to be fun to break this one down. So let's just dive right in. The 101 in this mock draft is going to be one Marvin Harrison Jr. How do you feel about that? Are you totally fine with Marv being 101? Is that just we're good?
I'm okay with it. I don't think that I'm personally there yet. I still will value probably whoever ends up being the 101 in NFL drafts. I think I'm still going to value them. Just it's obviously not the same because we don't have the same evaluation of running backs and wide receivers that we did in 2023 with Bijan Robinson being the 101 at a lot of times. But as soon as the season starts, obviously Bijan, if you were to redraft it, immediately slips below the quarterback one as soon as the season starts. So why are you taking him at the 101 of rookie drafts? I don't think we have the same evaluation of Marvin Harrison because he is a wide receiver, because he is projected to immediately be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. But if he's not, and if he goes to the wrong spot, I personally don't have him here at the 101. I'm not taking Marvin Harrison, the wide receiver, at the 101. I'm still going Caleb Williams more than likely at the 101, but I don't think it's that drastic of a miscalculation. I think anybody here, really in the top three or four, I could have any of four people at the 101. I personally have a different opinion, but I do kind of like seeing the difference of Marvin Harrison being at the 101 by Ty here.
Yeah, I agree. I think, as far as like talent wise, everyone just knows like it feels like Marv is a sure thing for the most part. But again, situation does matter for all of these guys, which I do want to bring up one Jaden Daniels because he did go off the board at 3 here ahead of Drake May as a second quarterback, but at the 103 slot. And it's just one of these things like I feel like it used to be a separation, like whereas Caleb Williams 101 or Caleb Williams as QB1 no matter what. And then it was a tier to Drake May, and then it was a tier to everybody else. That's not the case anymore. And in fact, the more I've looked into Jaden Daniels' advanced metrics and kind of his passing game, frame wise, he's a little slider. Everyone keeps saying Anthony Richardson. That's not the case. Just because he can run, he's not Anthony Richardson. He's not the same kind of player, but he can do some really good things with his legs as well. And when we broke down the other mock, or we kind of talked about some of the quarterbacks, I'm just like, man, like why would I take Drake May over Jaden Daniels? Like they have similar passing profiles. And Jaden Daniels is, I mean, don't get me wrong, Drake May is still very good with his legs, but Jaden Daniels obviously did a lot more in college. So I am curious, where are you at between the two of Daniels and May? And is there any world you can put Jaden Daniels as QB1 in this class?
I could do it dependent upon the situation where I think it's basically what situation do I think best aligns for the quarterback to run, right?
Sure.
Obviously, we need more information about who the head coaches are, who the offensive coordinators are. As of right now, we've only got, 2 spots left in the head coaching search. So we're getting down to the nitty gritty of it. I don't know about Shane Waldron with Caleb Williams being in that system. If that's the route that this does take, kind of the expected route for Caleb Williams, it'll depend on where Jaden Daniels go. Does he go number 2 overall to the Washington Commanders with whoever they hire? Maybe it's a Ben Johnson type. We don't really know what he would have with a rushing profile quarterback because he hasn't really had that with Jared Goff. There's a lot of unknowns with this, man. So I think I'd still have him right here at number 2, but I do think compared to what, like you were saying, I think the rushing profile does elevate him over Drake May just because of, is at least for me right now, before I've really dug into these guys a whole hell of a lot, just the overall statistics of what I'm looking at, that rushing profile is so much higher than Drake May. The only thing, like you said, is the frame because we really haven't had a rushing quarterback come in at 180, 185 and try to be a rushing quarterback in the NFL. I'm not really concerned about it because of how quarterbacks are protected right now. Because, man, if he goes down for any slide and gets hit at all, even at 180, he's still going to get a 15-yard penalty and people are going to be scared to even tackle him. I'm really not concerned about his rushing ability at the NFL level because of his size, because of the state of the NFL. So I'm probably going to be a Jaden Daniels number 2 overall guy in the quarterback ranks.
Yeah, and I know I've seen a lot of people saying, Kyler Murray is also little and slight frame. Kyler
Yep,
Murray's
he's
to
thick.
actually 207. Yeah, like
He's thick. He's
he's 20 pounds heavier, like than Daniels. And I know we're off of that narrative of size when it comes to running backs and wide receivers. That's fine, and it might be perfectly fine for Jaden Daniels. I hope that's the case, but it is a little concerning because again, franchise quarterback, you don't necessarily want them going out there taking that kind of hit if you're getting taken at the top 3 pick in the NFL draft. So going to
I
be
mean,
very interesting to see.
Kyler's also like 4 inches shorter, isn't he? He's like
Yeah,
5'10", 5'11", and 20 pounds heavier.
yeah,
That's not Jaden Daniels, 6'3", 180, 185.
yeah.
It's a light
Yep.
frame for a quarterback running around in the NFL.
Then let's jump into the number 5 pick here, and that is Malik Neighbors that did come up here at the your pick as the 105. I love Malik Neighbors, and I do think that this is going to be a guy that, while we might have questions of Marv going to Chicago or wherever he may end up in the as wide receiver 1 overall, most likely in the NFL draft, I think Malik Neighbors might be a few picks behind and find himself in a situation that can benefit him a lot more. But when you really look at the advanced numbers, you look at a lot of the things that he does well. I, we talk about it all the time. Like I don't know that there's that big of a difference for me between Marv and Neighbors, and if anything, I I'm I don't know if I should say it, but it's like Malik Neighbors might have a higher ceiling than Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, it sounds crazy to say, and Marv does so many things so well, but Neighbors does too. And if anything, like you see what he does after the catch, and we didn't have to see that from Marv, but Malik just looks electric out there, and it just pops out of every single game that I've ever seen him play, and it's just like he looks like he's the best player on the field.
He's incredibly explosive. Along the lines of what you said, if Marvin Harrison is coming into the NFL or into dynasty ranks as a top 3, top 4 wide receiver, Malik Neighbors should be coming into the NFL as a top 8 wide receiver. Now, I don't think either of those things should be true. I think Marvin Harrison should be top 8, Malik Neighbors should be like top 12, 15. But with the way the wide receiver landscape is right now, I mean, whenever you're trying to put Jalen Waddle up into the top 12 of dynasty wide receivers, somebody's got to go there. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors are probably going to slide into that role. So we're looking at these 3 quarterbacks that look like they're locked in to go within the top 5 at minimum of the draft, along with possibly the 2 wide receivers as well. This just looks like an absolutely stacked and studded wide receiver and fantasy draft for the top 5 picks of the NFL draft. Absolutely love Malik Neighbors, as you said, but we can get into another guy who could potentially go in the top 7 as well. A lot of people are mocking him to the Los Angeles Chargers as they just got their new head coach who loves the tight end room in Jim Harbaugh. Love himself some Brock Bowers potentially at number 5 overall as well.
Man, I think everyone loves Brock Bowers and the talent that he is and what he can do on the field. I don't think you could paint a better picture or put a better situation for him. Like, I don't think everyone kind of envisioned it in the past, like, oh, the Chargers could use a tight end. It's like, well, now that Jim Harbaugh's there, they could really use a tight end. And like Brock Bowers sitting there at 5 is going to be just money. I am, we play with heavy tight end premiums for the most part, 1.75 minimum, typically. So if it's a 1.75, 2.0, like, I don't have any issue here. I just am curious your thoughts of like a highly productive, like, do you think he can be a year 1 Sam Laporta? Like, is that a range of outcomes for Brock Bowers right off the rip? Because tight ends usually take a little time.
Usually they have in the past, but I think we've seen from this past draft class, one prior as well. We had a lot of guys out. It was 2022 whenever we didn't even think of that anything of that class to be tight end productive, and we had a lot of guys just be at the very minimum useful. At least they landed in that top 24 tight end range, wherever you have a lot of guys in the past that would take 3 years to even get to that range. So I think that you can at least rely on a little bit of production from Brock Bowers types year 1. And even if they don't hit that like tight end 6, tight end 7 upside, or like the Laporta tight end 1 upside, I don't think that that's probably in the range of that. That's like the Puka Nakua range of outcomes, right? Like, that doesn't happen for everyone. That's few and far in between where that actually happens. But Brock Bowers could easily become Dalton Kincaid I think that
Yeah.
could easily be a very viable outcome for Brock Bowers to come into the league and just produce like Dalton Kincaid did. And so I'm perfectly fine. If you want to take him here, perfectly fine with the pick. Once you get past these top 5 picks, I do think that there's a separation between everybody else in this draft. And if you want a potential difference maker at the tight end position in a tight end premium, there's obviously nobody other than Brock Bowers that you would take. So I'm perfectly fine here with him here at the 106.
Yeah, I think I mean if you miss the playoffs this year and you have your pick, you're gonna be pretty excited. I think any of these top 6 guys, and you can even go 7 with Rome. It feels like those are all very good, talented players that have the ability to be game changers at the next level. So, very excited for all of those. Gonna kind of not skip through, but touch on just the back half of this draft. So we have Odunze, Franklin, we have Thomas out of LSU. We did have one Jatavian Sanders pop up here, then Keon Coleman and JJ McCarthy. So just talking about JT, Jatavian Sanders, again, you see the player card here, 6'4", 256. Big dude. He did a lot of good things at Texas. Very clearly the tight end 2 of this class, and I do think that he is a super talented player. Again, situation is going to matter for tight ends, opportunity, those types of things, how quickly he's going to be able to get onto the field and play. But I'm super excited about this guy too. I think he could be a very solid steal at the back part of a draft. The problem is he plays tight end. That's what I keep going back to, is it's a tight end, but he could be a very good top 12, top 15 tight end this year in fantasy. But again, does that matter?
Exactly. Top 10, top 15 tight end fantasy, but hashtag tight ends don't matter if you haven't been around the Destination Devy crew for a while. And if you're for some reason finding us before you found them, we've been on hashtag tight ends don't matter outside of maybe the top 2 or 3 for about 2 years now. And it's kind of played out exactly like that, especially once you get into war and everything like that. And if you want to do a deeper dive into that, you can definitely go over to destinationdevy.com and figure that out for yourself, or listen into the pod. We do the overreaction pod on there as well. Tight ends don't matter though. And if you're going to tell me that Brock Bowers is barely on the fringe line of like, I can see him mattering and I can give you a reason for me to pick him at the 106, I can't get there with JT, man. And also, I surprise myself every once in a while that I see these Texas player cards pop up, and I remember that I put the upside down logo on them, and it makes me laugh a little bit inside. I'm sorry if any of y'all are Texas fans. I'm not. I'm an A&M. Giga Maggie's fan. Yeah, you see it right there. So I'm sorry that I have to do this to you, but I'm making these and I have the power. So JT upside down horns. I'm not picking him here at the 110, but I can understand if your league values the tight end the way a lot of leagues do. I can understand the value, but I don't want to hold him if I'm taking that. I'd rather trade. Can I trade JT for Evan Ingram, David Njoku? Easily would trade 1-for-1 straight up that pick.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thought here. I mean, I do think this might be a little bit early. I do like Jatavian Sanders as far as the talent goes. I just don't know if I'm really willing to take him in the first round right now.
It better be 2.0 premium or start 2 tight end for me to take him at the 108 or even in the first round, honestly.
Yeah. So if you want to pull up the second round here, we can check out kind of how the back half rolls into the first. So this is a snake style, or sorry, not a snake. This is a linear style. Yeah, as you would be doing in your regular mocks or your regular draft. So yes, we wrap up with Keon Coleman, JJ McCarthy, get into some Bo Nix, Xavier Worthy, and Adonai Mitchell to kind of wrap out. So a lot of Texas here popping up. Right now, this happens every single year. Every single year. Right now, everyone's assuming there's going to be a fourth first-round quarterback. And so when we see these quarterbacks taken, this won't happen in April, but I get why they're taking it. People are just taking their bet right now on which one makes it. And you brought up on Bo Nix. Tell me about him.
I did bring up Bo Nix, and I think personally, honestly, I don't see it with JJ McCarthy. I don't see first round status with JJ McCarthy. I cannot fathom a team either spending their luxury first round pick on JJ McCarthy or trading into the first to spend their luxury picks on JJ McCarthy. I cannot see it for whatever reason. It's not me. I can't get there. I can see it with Nix and Penix, but even then, I don't really buy into the fifth round option. hype of drafting a guy in the first round anymore. It just causes problems for all these teams. We've seen it with Daniel Jones. We've seen it with Jordan Love. Now, one of them worked out, one of them didn't. It gives you a little bit more flexibility, I guess, but typically just tries to lock you in a little bit more. So I don't really know, but Knicks I'm going to bring up here because he is this first one taken at the 201. I bring it up to say what you said right there before we got to this is we're taking them here now because we think they're going to be drafted where they are. Whenever we're doing these mocks, and you need to understand that we're doing these mocks, and every single person has the thought process of they could be a first round draft pick. When we get to the actual NFL draft, they're not going to be. There's probably only going to be four of these guys, in my estimation, that actually make it into the first round. And that shifts the entire board by 2 picks. So whenever you think, oh my gosh, this class is so deep, we have all the way to the 210 where I'm actually comfortable taking players. Once you get the NFL draft, once you get the combine numbers, I bet it's probably only the 2-4. And 4 of those players, 4 to 6 of those players will immediately go away and off the board. And so I just want to get a little bit of caution to seeing 6 quarterbacks in the top 20 picks here. I don't think that that's a reasonable outcome whenever we actually get to draft day.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, we've seen the Malik Willises of years past and Hendon Hookers, and we always see guys that get boosted up because there's some sort of hype around them, and that's just because we're drafting this time of year. So these types of things are going to happen. People are just taking their bets on those guys. But yeah, like I think we'll see how this back half of the first really does shape out, and early part of the second with draft capital. And then as we do get the combine scores, hear about Senior Bowl, different things like that, what's coming out from these NFL teams in regards to their thoughts and opinions on these players, how they interviewed. I can't wait for some more S2 scores.
Boy, you see they put out a whole presentation about CJ Stroud.
Yeah, of course they did. You can't miss that big. But yeah, let's move into some running backs here, because the running back one that does come off the board is Blake Corum, and
I love it. I absolutely love it, man. He should not be the running back one off the board in any class. But I do legitimately think he has a shot to be the running back one off the board in dynasty rookie drafts in this class, because of how just there's no other. I don't like to call classes bad, but this is a freaking awful running back class. It's just a bunch of jags all across the board. But Blake Corum, even though he's 5'8", 200, and he might look a little bit like Deuce Vaughn at times, he's the best out of them all. He's the best out of all of them that we have. I fully agree with putting Blake Corum RB1. Do you feel the same?
I mean, I guess
the only other one that I could see is Allen.
Yeah, Braylon Allen. Yeah. Braylon Allen I do like, and I think that the NFL is going to like him more. But and I think opportunity wise, it might serve him better for Braylon Allen. But you say they're Jags, and for me, I think every running back in the NFL
running back's a Jag now.
So for the most part, it's an exaggeration, but really when you look at this, he could have a role on a team, and it's just going to depend on what that split looks like. Again, you talk about Jim Harbaugh going to LA, and they could, if they can keep Eckler there and bring Blake Corum in as the hammer, that's a great 1-2 combo. You can have a Zeke and Pollard type of combo there. Wouldn't that be interesting if Kellen Moore stays as the offensive coordinator? Those types of things do, make that enticing. But Blake Corum goes to another situation where he's, 1B behind Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry's older, so he's probably going to split some work, but he's going to get 40% of the work. Is he Jaylen Warren? That would be cool, I guess. But I don't think I'm taking Jaylen Warren as running back one in the class. So going to be very interesting how landing spot actually makes a big difference for people this year over just draft capital. Again, you see it with Devon Achane. He actually got opportunity, but he smashed with some opportunity. I just don't know that Blake Corum has that home run ability that Achane has. So I just don't know what kind of role he's going to have. He feels like a 40% type of guy, not a true lead back where he's going to get 50 to 60% of the work.
And that's perfectly fine, but I don't think anybody in this class is getting over 60% of the work. Braylon Allen's an absolute hammer, but unless he gets a Derrick Henry role, which doesn't exist in the NFL anymore, especially as Mike Vrabel's now out, he's probably not getting a head coaching position. That role doesn't exist in the NFL anymore. And there's only like Mike Tomlin used to be that, but now that's a split backfield with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. He's even gone to
Yeah,
he's even gone. What role is going to exist for that type? Like he's probably just going to be at best David Montgomery if he gets
yeah,
into a really efficient offense. And so I'll take the guy who has a little bit of a receiving profile. And I know it's not much here, 16 receptions, 117 yards in his senior season, but man, he's an absolute grinder on the
something.
field. It's at least something. And with the running back position as it is right now, I still have Blake Corum as my RB1. It's disappointing a little bit, but I do love Blake Corum a lot. And I had him originally whenever we thought he was going to come out last year. I think I had him as like RB4 or 5. So it's a little bit of a preconceived bias on me probably. But I do love myself some Blake Corum.
Well, I want to look at the wide receivers here because I do want to kind of go back to the first and then wrap into the second, just because
Let's
this
go.
range of wide receiver is just so much. We have Franklin, Thomas, Coleman, Xavier Worthy. I think is getting slept on a bit too much in the second. I know that there's concerns over the drops and stuff like that. Jordan Backus over at Destination Devy, one of the big things that he looks at when he talks about the analytics side of things is drops, or like their ability to catch the ball in college is the least correlative stat that converts into the NFL. Does that make sense? So basically, the drops that they have in college don't correlate at all to the NFL and their fantasy success. That's basically what it breaks down to. So looking at that, and then you've obviously talked about your love for Quinn Ewer's arm and how he misses wide open Worthy all the time too. I think
It's
Worthy, Worthy looks probably going to have a little bit better profile or a little bit better opportunity in the NFL than he did in college. But really, all the way to Walker probably is like an entire tier, like Franklin to Walker here.
Yeah, literally, I fully agree. Honestly, I'd expand it to even putting in Polk, McConkey, and Leggett in there. I think
Maybe
McMillan's the one outside. Now, I don't think that any of those guys have the opportunity to be like wide receiver 4, right? But I do think they have the ability to get into the range of like wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, dependent upon the draft capital and the landing spot that they end up going to. So, I mean, it truthfully is just a group of probably 8 guys that we're eventually going to have fully defined out wide receiver ranks, and we're going to put all these guys in an order of where we like them. But it's going to be highly variable between now and the NFL draft and whenever they actually get to a team, and we can actually see where they tend to align within an NFL scheme and an NFL offense. Because you can have JSN as your wide receiver 1 for the entirety of the season, but if we do a little bit of revisionist history and we look at that Seattle offense and we look at comparatively to the Minnesota offense or a lot of the other offenses in the NFL, we really should not have had JSN as the wide receiver 1. And I think we could do that with Harrison and Malik Neighbors potentially as well. I think we do that with any of these wide receivers. Wide receiver 3, honestly, I'd even put a Dunze in there. Wide receiver 3 through wide receiver 11, I'm fine with shifting up any of them depending on where they land and where they go in terms of draft capital.
I am not there. I definitely think Odunze is in.
I do think he's separate, but like if he gets a really bad spot, I think he's potential to fall within the range.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, that clarification does make sense then. Yeah, and yeah, so again, that's why this process goes on. These things will shake themselves out as far as the wide receivers go. Same thing as the running backs. Anything really that second round or late first to second round, everything's going to shake itself out. And if you think about the names from past classes, thinking about Marvin Mims and Jonathan Mingo from last year, it's like all of those guys were early. Kendre Miller, early seconds, sometimes late first for Kendre, and we've learned. You learn over the years, learn by doing this, that you have to kind of look at those situations like you mentioned with JSN. So you have to just truly look at those situations regardless of draft capital. It's like, is the opportunity going to be there? And maybe that person is going to be a world beater and take out, Charbonnet is going to take out, Ken Walker, maybe, but maybe not as well. So things to kind of consider.
And one more along that line, just because you're mentioning Kendre Miller as we go into this third round. The last one that I want to bring up, Jonathan Brooks, one more upside down logos.
I had to do it.
I'm sorry I had to do it. But Jonathan Brooks, very honestly, will remove myself from my A&M bias. Very good running back, but coming in off of a severe knee injury that could hamper him through the offseason process. And that's what we saw with Kendre Miller, was because he couldn't get healthy enough to actually involve himself in the offense throughout the preseason. If you aren't in the offense, they aren't going to trust you to be in the offense. And so whenever Kendre Miller had that knee scope, had that knee injury, he was not going to be in that New Orleans Saints offense. And we could potentially see the same thing with Jonathan Brooks. It is why, honestly, if he was not injured, he'd probably be the RB1 by far and away of this
I
draft
was
class.
just gonna say that. I was like, I think that doesn't happen. He is RB1 for sure.
Exactly. So we just want to put that caveat out there, only because it's not just the injury, but it's about the offseason progression that he can do as a rookie that hampers him significantly. So I just wanted to put that one out there before we get into the third round. But let's get into that third round now, and let's look at the running back round. This is where all the running backs go, and we just watched ourselves some Bucky Irving. Let's go to let's pull up old Bucky Irving. I really liked him. I don't know if you were able to see that. I don't know if you were able to see that, but that was a very good showing by Bucky Irving. We were doing one of the film breakdowns in the Destination Devy chat a couple of days ago or last night, and whenever you're seeing this one, and Bucky Irving, I really, really liked the comp that I made in there, and I know Ray G is going to steal this one. I do have to put it out there that it was from me on this channel. You can steal it everywhere else, Ray, but I do have to put it on wax that it was mine. He is a juiced up Devin Singletary, and I really love that comp.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, he's 190 pounds. The big concern, and again, we talked about this briefly earlier when it comes to Daniels, but slider frames don't necessarily matter all that much. We don't want him to be, Achan is definitely an outlier. So 190 is fine for weight wise. I'm not really concerned about that. Again, it's going to be rolling opportunity. Rolling opportunity. Where's he go? How are they going to use him? He's shifty. He has shift in him. I know one of the kind of the plays that we were breaking down kind of reminded him of DeAndre Swift and that kind of ability to kind of cut back and make defenders miss. Split him out a few times. Sometimes it was a decoy. He was able to at least catch the ball. As you can see here, he does have a good receiving profile.
Is nice.
I think that he's going to find himself a really good role. Again, land in a situation with an offensive coordinator that knows how to use him. That's going to be the big key. But with the way the NFL is changing, give me a guy that can catch the ball. Give me a guy that's going to get on the field 40% of the time. And for fantasy purposes, it's going to work itself out.
Yeah, obviously not the exact same as last year whenever I had originally Charbonnet over Gibbs. And then we got to the NFL draft and Gibbs was taken 12 overall to the Lions, and I skyrocketed Gibbs up my ranks. Like It was just complete 180 because I was like, holy crap, he's going to get 100 targets. Now, was that the case? No, not exactly. But he was very heavily used within that scheme and used correctly within that scheme with Ben Johnson. And like you said, this is a very scheme fit guy. It's a very orientation fit guy. Where does he go with what capital? I think that he's going to be a late day 2, early day 3 guy. And I'm very excited for what could be of Bucky Irving. But I mean, you put him in a place like, I don't know. You put him in a place like the Texans, and Devin Singletary's still there, and they re-sign him, and he's not going to have a role. It's definitely going to be where he goes and what role he goes into, because he is definitely a zone scheme runner. He's not going to be a Derek. Obviously, you looked at that player graphic. He's not going to be Derrick Henry running up the A gap. Yeah. He's 5'10", 190. That's not his role. He should not be James Cook with the Buffalo Bills. He should not be Austin Eckler trying to run the ball 25 times for the Chargers. It's not his role. Could he do it? Yes, he could, but it's not his role. And he could do much better if he serves as a complementary role than he would be as an actual workhorse role. So I'm hoping he lands in the right spot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at that 186 attempts, 56 receptions. Again, very Eckler-esque. Not saying that that's the player comp, but as far as role-wise, he should not be the ground and pound in between the tackles guy all the time. So, I mean, really looking at the rest of this third round, again, Bucky Irving, Trey Benson, Estime, I can't even say his name right now. Estime, Shipley, Davis, Lloyd, like all these running backs are going to shift drastically. we see some more quarterbacks taken, just for funsies. We got Spencer Rattler finally making his NFL draft
The fact that he's
appearance.
drafted is wild to me, but
Yeah, I think maybe it was for fun. I don't know.
no, I mean, legitimately though, once you get into this range,
Take your shot.
it's not even take your shot. It's literally roster construction at this point, right? Like that's where it legitimately lines into, is because we're playing roster construction at this point of, hey, if I'm playing in a lineup league, I probably want 8 to 10 quarterbacks on my roster. If you align to that theory, then you probably want to take your third and fourth round picks on the quarterbacks that are taken in the fourth to seventh rounds.
And that's totally fair. The thing that I look at, and this is probably a conversation for another show as you pull up fourth round, because again, we're getting into to no man's land. These players are all going to shift up, down, in, and out. There's a few we're going to highlight here, but when it comes to quarterbacks, I mean, if you really think about it, it's usually the veterans that get the opportunity. Like, sure, rookies have had a shot at cracking it, but it's a lot of times it's those vet bodies that actually get into the starting lineup, or at least get that first crack at the position before rolling out rookies. But
I mean, we didn't see it this year. I think it
true,
was 9 to 10 rookies this year got starting job, or at least 1 week as a starter.
I say that's the thing, is like it's the long term. But yeah, I get it. I totally get it. So then same thing, Jordan Travis coming off major injury, but really Brendan Rice, solid receiver out of USC and Colorado, but coming out of USC, I think he's going to be a guy that should have a little bit more buzz about him. Same thing with Jacob Cowing. Role specific or team dependent as well. I do think that both of those guys are probably going to end up going into the high third, early second type of, or late second, excuse me, rounds when all is said and done. Other than that, I mean, really, anyone else you want to highlight here? Johnny Wilson, maybe in the second. You want to talk about some Jaheim Bell?
No, I mean, we're getting to, once we get past the 3-6, honestly, we're getting to the wide receivers that I haven't exactly scouted yet. I know who they are. They're on the list to really get into and look at, but I haven't really gone into them yet. The quarterbacks, it's going to be fully dependent upon draft capital, so I don't really have any significant takes on them. Obviously, I do think Milton, Rattler, Travis do get drafted, but what's their opportunity to actually get on the field? If they don't have an opportunity or want to get on the field, then they're obviously just a cut candidate. You shouldn't spend a draft pick on them. Even if it, I mean, I guess for injury, you can hold them, but they should be one of your roster construction series players if you're actually going to do that. We're looking at all these wide receivers in the fourth round, and that's where I think I want to have the last conversation before we go out of here.
Yeah.
Last year, whenever we were at this point, it was the only thing that you can draft at this point is running back, because wide receivers are not threshold wide receivers, and you can't draft them. And then we saw Tank Dell and Puka Nacua come out and just absolutely blow away the competition and turn into top 20 dynasty wide receivers from the fourth round or even the undrafted rounds.
Yeah.
Is it a bit of an overreaction, or is it still the right process to take the running backs at this point?
I've been thinking about this a lot too, because it's been a lot of conversation. You can throw, Michael Wilson in there as well, because he was productive and he was a late round guy. Not necessarily, he wasn't to the extent of Puka and Tank, but still used within the offense as a rookie, in comparison to a lot of guys that were getting drafted. I mean, I talked about it off air. Zach Kuntz was going, because of his RAS score, and it's like, he was getting taken against running backs and tight ends. Usually, just take your shots, right? I do think that the NFL, and as well as us as fantasy managers, content creators out in the space as well, are going to do a better job of kind of finding those guys, kind of talking about those guys. Again, we've made adjustments looking at opportunity. I do think that they're probably outliers. Am I willing to take shots? Sure. But in the end, we're talking about two guys that did hit. Am I fully shifting away? No. If there's running backs that have draft capital or that have a situation, I'm probably still going to take them in the third and fourth round. unless there's a guy that I really like that I'm high on. It's like, oh, Jacob Cowling went to a great spot. He was torching, he tore up the combine, got higher draft capital than expected, and he could be potentially wide receiver 2 on a team, and he's, still on the board in the 3rd, 4th round. Like, yeah, those types of things are going to change. But I do think that we're going to start noticing the Pukas, at least the Amon-Ra's, where there's opportunity a little bit better than just saying like, the draft capital sucked. Like, let's write them off.
And that's where I'll end this with is we talk about that. I've been talking about this one in the Discord for the last 2 days of, yes, that Puka, it looks so good, right? Like revisionist history, it looked so good. Why was he not the wide receiver 2? Because whenever we came into the season, Van Jefferson was still there. He got traded away. Ben Skoranek was still there. He resorted to nothing. Tutu Atwell was still the 3. Literally, if you go back to my projections, Puka Nacua was the wide receiver 5 on the team. We did not think that he was going to just walk into a wide receiver 2 role. You know who we thought was going to walk into a wide receiver 2 role? Jalen Hyatt. Walked into a wide receiver 3 role? Cedric Tillman. It's completely revisionist history of how we got to Puka Nacua. Everybody's just like, can we take that 4th round? It was so easy to see Puka because there was nothing else there. Cooper Kupp went on IR right before the season. He wasn't on IR whenever we drafted him in the 4th round, or he went undrafted in the rookie draft in May. That wasn't the case. So like there were so many things that had to lead to that. I think it's completely revisionist history. Tank Dell was even taken in the back of the 3rd in ADP as I just pulled it up. I think we got very lucky last year. I think there was a very outlier season last year. And I think with what we're seeing in this rookie draft right now, and honestly, I just took Anaya Smith because he was an A&M guy. I'm sorry if I was ruining mock draft because of that. I do think he's a good player, but it's besides the point. But I do think if we start to see this become a trend in the draft, whenever we get much closer and we actually get more data, combine data, draft data, we start seeing wide receivers be taken because everybody wants to hit on the next Puka Nacua. I think that's wrong process.
And that's fair. When you really think about it though, like I think the things I'm looking out for is the hype leading up to the draft, the excitement around a player. Obviously draft capital does matter. I don't want to just disregard it. And then situation does matter as well. But there was a lot of talk about Puka Nacua. People were very excited about him, liked what they saw in film, and then what killed him was the draft capital. And like you said, he was going to be wide receiver 5 on that team. Like really, when you look at it, it's like, okay, he's 5th round pick, wide receiver 5. Yeah, we like him. Maybe one day. His situation, Tank Dell, another one. Everyone raved about him. No one wanted to line up one-on-one coverage against him at the Senior Bowl. Everyone talked about him leading up to it. And then it's like, well, rookie quarterback Nico Collins is already there. Robert Woods is in place. He wasn't necessarily going to just come into a significant role. So yes, I agree with you that those are they're definitely outliers just because the opportunity wasn't present at draft time, but the opportunity did present itself. And then like at that point, I think it's more or less a lesson of buying them when that opportunity does potentially strike. Of like, okay, we've heard a lot of good things about these guys throughout the process. I'm willing to buy them and take that gamble, give someone that 3rd round pick, to profit, just re-roll, because people were re-rolling. People had no problem getting off of those players. It's like give them a leverage deal, a 3rd and a backup running back, and just take a shot on some guys that I might be willing to gamble on. But again, it's
as long
tough.
as you don't re-roll into Michael Wilson or Sean Tucker or any of the 23 other guys in the 3rd and 4th rounds that weren't Tank Dell and Puka Nacua. Like honestly,
we call them darts for a reason. We call them darts.
It's a throw at the dartboard. Yeah. I would love to see somebody who laid out the way that Puka Nacua was going to become exactly what he was in May. Show me that, and I'll fully buy into it. But I don't think there were many people outside of Debro who's been hyping him up since the first day that he saw him. And even then, there's still not a laid out path of how he gets there, right? Because there were still people in front of him, and he had to overtake them.
I like the player talent. That's what it came down to.
Exactly, and the talent did overtake, and I can absolutely get behind that, and that is an amazing call, right? But still, there was no clear path from day one to get there. He had to do so much to get there, and he did do it, and that's amazing that he did. And how you make that call, give full give full credit to it. But there's no process that leads me to that point, other than that player's just better, right?
Yep. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So I think that wraps it up. You know, we're gonna be doing a ton of rookie mocks. Obviously, it's January right now, so we're gonna be doing a ton of rookie mocks. You know, throughout the process, as we get new information, as we can, you know, finish our scouting and our process. I want to say scouting. That sounds weird. As we finish our rankings, there we go. And is watching some film, watching some tape, learning a little bit more about these guys, and we will be releasing our ranks too throughout startup drafts. Make sure you do like this video, follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Cody Smith TFDR, at Trophy Chase TFDR. Do subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. We really do appreciate that. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap out?
No, it's going to be a really fun time. We got stuff planned out for the next 12 weeks until we get to the NFL draft. It'll be a fun time until then. It'll be a fun time after then. Draftathon whenever we get there on the Destination Devy channel. Once again, hopefully we'll get on, you know, for the whole thing instead of just day 3 this time. But you know, we'll have a couple drinks. We'll have a good time. We'll be going through all of those draft picks. We'll be doing literally the same thing for 12 weeks straight. Isn't that going to be fun? We're not going to get tired of it at all. Not going to get tired of it at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that too, man. Yeah, it's going to be a great process. Again, make sure you do check us out, destinationdevy.com. Tap in there. Go to patreon.com/all gas. Find a tier that's best for you. If you're in the DTi5 and Heisman tier, I believe it's called Destination 5. That tier is the one you want to be in. That's where you get access to everybody, anyone, and you'll have the voice chat as well as, you know, some private AMAs, things like that. And it truly just pulls back the curtain on the content creators over at Destination Devy. Nonstop access, get your questions answered, jump in voice chat with everybody, and just truly transform your dynasty game. The place to be for fantasy, hands down. So again, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Fantasy Draft Room.